right. Welcome to another episode of the Digital Recruiter podcast. So today I am excited to be joined by Jordan Greenberg. He's co-founder of the Recruitery. He helps early stage companies, avoid those costly mishires. He's worked in insurance with Liberty Mutual. He's SaaS background, consulting, before getting into agency recruiting. He was one of the first people to ever buy any course from the Digital Recruiter. So I appreciate him, and I love his journey of just kind of putting in the work, having the right systems, and really thinking strategically about your business and what that can result in. So I'm excited to have him share a story. And the cool part is he's got a little international flair. He's out in Israel and has close clients in different countries. So we're going to talk about that too. I'm really excited for this conversation. So Jordan, thanks for being here, man.
Yeah, happy to be here, Clark. Thanks for having me.
Of course, of course. Well, let's start off with a little get to know you, because I know it's all different for all of us. But how'd you get into recruiting?
Yeah, so it's a good question. I was an operator for 10 years, as you said, working Fortune 500, Liberty Mutual, and then moving into consulting, doing more so digital and cloud implementations. And that was in Boston, and I moved to Israel about 5.5 years ago. And I actually got into recruiting just by looking for my first role when I moved to Israel. And that was a customer success manager, which I did for 4.5 years. But in 2019, it took me about 8.5 months to find my role. I actually wrote an article about it. I can find a way to share that, the link to that after the
Absolutely.
podcast. But I applied to 2019. This was pretty rough. I don't think it's as bad as what I saw folks go into in 2023 and also this year. I applied to something like 105 different companies and roles. I had maybe 50 so interviews, like 15 assignments, and one job offer. And that was
Wow.
all it was. And it was really hard because what I found the recruiting experience to be like in America was, when I came from Liberty Mutual as like a consultant and then also as a business analyst, it was very transferable. I think that recruitment teams and companies could say, oh, okay, you do that. Okay, so therefore you could be a customer success manager. Or, oh, you do this. Okay, you can do that. I found that in American culture, at least, recruiting teams and hiring teams had a better idea of putting together the dots. And countless times I would go into interviews in Israel, and they'd be like, "Well, what are you? Are you like a software developer? Are you a biz dev person? Are you like they could?" And like I remember meeting a mid-stage startup, and it had a really big office and a huge team. And there I was in the last interview, sitting with the CEO of this 100-person startup, and him saying, like, help me help you. Like, what are you? Like, what are you doing? And I was like, what? Like, what's going on here? Like, I realized that in Israel, the culture is it's much more cookie cutter. It's either if you did sales, you're business development. If you did customer service or you did some sort of implementation, you're customer success. If you knew how to code, then you're software developer. And there's not much gray space. I figured that out very early on. And on top of that, it's not like you can apply maybe in 29, like this today, I have my opinions about this. In 2023, things are definitely, in 2024, things are definitely different. But back in the day, 2019,
4 years
2018, you
ago,
could
5 years ago, yeah.
5 years ago, you could apply to a job on their website, and you could get a interview, and that was working a little bit. I wouldn't recommend that today for any place you go, especially in a startup. But back then, you could, but it was just like figuring it out, like, what are you? So I realized then, okay, I have to switch my strategy. I have to start like going to Facebook groups. Facebook is much bigger in Israel than it is in the United States for employment, and like joining these groups and reaching out to people that work for these companies and like adding them as a friend on Facebook. This is when I had Facebook. And then, hey, I see you work here. Let's get coffee. Let's talk about it. It's much more informal. Same thing with LinkedIn as well. Just like build these relationships, and It's and actually in Israel they have a phrase for it. It's called kombina, which really means who do you know? It's all about your connections. Who can get you in there? You know, I know someone that knows someone. It's very much a family and community mentality. High tech is really big here. There's tons of big companies that have come out of Israel that have expanded into the United States and into Europe and also into Asia. But in terms of the actual high tech business community, everyone knows each other. And on top of that, when you leave your job in high tech in Israel, the likelihood is that you'll go to a company where that you've worked with someone before. You see it all the time. So it's all about connections here. It's all about knowing that. And I didn't know that at the time. It took me a long time. But at the end of the day, though, it was a recruiter, a third party recruiter that found me this role that was that I did as a customer success manager. And I also learned that on the other side of it, it took the hiring team for the startup 6 months to find me. So I realized that was the first time I was like, huh, okay, so a recruiter can do good. A recruiter can add value. And at the end of the day, that was a good fit. I was there for 4.5 years. I got promoted. I brought in over, maintained over 500,000 in business within the first 2 years, expanded out into EMEA as well. It was a great even till the very end. To this day, have a great relationship. But that initial introduction was brokered by a recruiter. And that made me think, well, if it took me this long, to find a role, maybe I can also help people find roles like this as well. There's a lot of space for recruiters, as sales motivated as we are, to very much do good. You can really change a career for someone. You can change a life for someone in this game. So that was a big why to how I got into recruiting. So that's like one end of it. And then on the other end, working in early stage, I saw that company go from C to Series B. I saw the people that would come in the door and come out of the door. I think one of my big experiences was seeing when they had a VP of sales come in, and it was a great guy. He was really accomplished, did a lot. And it was just a misalignment from the beginning. He hired his team and got three AEs, and their mentality was sell at all costs to the specific SaaS offering that we had. And, you know, it was great to see, these logos coming in, those revenue coming in. It seemed it was good. Then you realize the customer success team would realize when these handovers happen, oh, this isn't a fit. This isn't going to work out. And we saw, churn go up. We saw all of a sudden deal cycles were taking much longer. And there was a misalignment in seller expectations and also just some buyer expectations. And within a year, the VP of sales was gone, his team was gone, and over $1 million in revenue was just wiped out. And that had a profound impact on me. I was just like thinking, this guy probably came in either through an introduction or he maybe came in through an executive recruiter. He came in through maybe a CV. And I'm just wondering to myself, well, how did the company prioritize this candidate? And how did the candidate prioritize this company? What happened during those interviews and during this assessment to bring in this person? And where was the misalignment? And how did this candidate ended up going in this different direction than based on what was expected? And I think that a really strong recruitment process can be brokered with a really strong recruiter that can bring in the right people so they can save people these problems. So from there, I was thinking, okay, I think I should take a pivot at some point and build out my own. I would love to be a recruiter and build this out myself to help early stage startups prevent this. And this was back in this started in 2021, where we saw all of this hiring, these lucrative sales deals coming in, and then by 2022, end of 2022, he was gone. And as we knew, 2023 was a really tough year for us. We saw a lot of close calls for the business, and unfortunately, when I left, the business was doing really strong, and they're in great hands. But there are a lot of lessons learned, and it all starts with how are we recruiting and who are we bringing in, and what is going into that assessment. And I thought that I could take a stab at that myself. So I ended up on the side of customer success. I was working customer success EMEA, so Europe, UK, Africa, Middle East, even Asia. And then at night, I worked the US hours. I started my own recruitment business focusing on the Boston market. That's where I'm originally from, and working with, and I got very, very lucky, not really knowing um, how to do proper biz dev outreach, just talking to a couple of people, just mainly reaching out on LinkedIn. Hey, I see you're hiring for customer success. I'm a customer success manager and a customer success recruiter. They're like, I'm confused. Like, what are you exactly? Like, I'm a recruiter, but I also do customer success. Like, okay, let's talk. Like,
Yeah.
wow, I got really lucky. I mean, like, I got very lucky. I was able to place two customer success managers with them. It took a couple of months, and I was also competing with two or three other recruiting firms. So I got lucky, and then I got another customer, and then we placed a director of operations, and then I placed a sales engineer, then I placed a DevOps person, and then it was the head of sales, and it started to flow through, and
Yeah.
I was like, wow, like thank God I was able to get to this business to this place, and now I left my company that I was working for the end of September, and I started going to this full time. And I've now had the chance to bring on new customers, invest more into your class, start doing different things. I'm posting now more on LinkedIn, getting more content out there. A lot of this also came from following and learning from you along the way too. So, and also having a really strong mentorship system as well. So, a lot of learning, a lot of um, being very blessed to figure this out, and a lot of refinement, and knowing that I don't even think I'm anywhere near where I want to be, but something's working despite being, 2023 being a really brutal year, and also a lot of turn down. Like was very blessed to build strong relationships with my clients, to get continued business, get close one role, come back a few months later, hey, we need help here, or hey, we need help here. This happens 3 or 4 times, and so pipeline generated from investing and doubling down in those customer relationships. So a lot happened, but it was a really, really telling year, and I'm really excited for what 2024 has to offer in this space.
That's awesome. I mean, there is a load to unpack there. So much, I think, from the 2019 experience of that impersonal application interview process, right? When you don't have the network, what you saw in Israel in 2019 is what a lot of recruiters felt to in the US in 2023, because the system was overwhelmed with
Yeah,
applications. Right. So everything you were doing instinctually is, you call it luck. I don't. I think so, once you understand why it worked, you realize, oh, it's not luck. You do earn your luck. And I think you just highlighted why. Number one, you keep at it, right? You have that gratitude of just like feeling blessed. I mean, that is such a key piece of pieces coming together for recruiters. I see it time and time again. The ones with the good attitude, the ones that keep working, that keep at it, and make the necessary pivots, right? And you mentioned like, all right, well, Israel kind of tends to pigeonhole people, but if you're in the network, then you're good, right? So it's like, all right, well, I got to go build the network. And it wasn't, making excuses and be like, well, they're going to pigeonhole me. I give up, right? It's everyone else's fault. It's like you figured out how to like, all right, well, what is different about this culture and how do I need to adapt, right? And that's huge. And I think one of the things you do really well is you leverage your strengths. So you're a customer success manager. What am I going to go recruit for? Well, why don't I go find people that need customer success managers? And
yeah,
like it becomes
exactly.
believable that you could find that person, right? You start there. You didn't get worried about, well, what if I block myself out of something else? It's like, who cares? Because you could just do that and probably you could have $1 million business. Honestly, if that was your one focus, and you were doing that while working full time. So there's no excuse for anyone else doing this. That's what I remember first talking to you about a year ago, and I was like, wait, you're working full time and you're implementing this? I'm like, all right, you're gonna make it. Like, I know you'll be all right. And I mean, sure enough, you followed up with me a few months later, like, hey, I got like 3 clients this year and all that, and Dripify is great, and I want to do more content. I'm like, well, that's exactly what I want to hear, right? But it's like you always just like I see you, you just always work. You're always doing it, like posting or running a campaign, or you're like before we talked, you're like, I got to come up with like the sales plan. I was in the course. You're like, you know what, this is good. Like I need my top 20. I'm gonna go over that with my business partner. Like you're just doing the things when you hear it and it makes sense. You just go do it. You don't let that stop you, and you're not looking for money that day, but you're just like, this is the right thing to do, and this will help me get to where I want to be. Uh,
Mhm.
so a lot to unpack. I mean, it's all just all gold. Like it all makes sense why you're able to just like
Yeah,
do this like methodically. When you do that in recruiting, the placements become pretty nice when when you start
yeah.
to get there, you're like, oh, well, maybe that the juice was worth the squeeze, right? And making those placements and doing the work and coming through and like that's what the opportunity is here. And it's just cool to see you take advantage of it.
Yeah, appreciate that.
Yeah.
I think in addition to execution, which I would say, yeah, look, there was so many opportunities to learn. It's like, okay, this makes sense. Let's jump on it. But it was also just, fortunately, being resourceful and trying to find the right people to have in your network that can help you, and you being one of those people. And so you mentioned, it's funny, you were saying that like, yeah, like doing a full-time job, also, a wife and the kids at
Yeah.
home, and then on top of that, doing this. At the time when I started following you, I I was really in a crunch for business development. Like my business development was like, I got this Crunchbase subscription and be like, okay, who are like the companies that are recently funded? I'll import the CSV, and then I'll pull it into a spreadsheet, and then I'll just go one by one into LinkedIn, see who the relevant, the ICP is, the ideal customer that I'm gonna go after, and then I'm just gonna like click LinkedIn, or let's see what happens, right? And then you started talking about this better ways. I'm like, okay, like this, well, the current way I'm doing right now is taking me 3 hours a day. And if I start my day at 1 p.m. Eastern time in recruiting, and I finish my day at 5:30 p.m. Eastern time, that means I'm only recruiting for 2 hours a day or getting on the phone, and I'm devoting the rest of my time to biz dev. That's not sustainable.
Mhm.
So when I took your first class and you started talking about how you can automate this in Dripify, it was like, whoa, this is a game changer for me, because all of a sudden, everything I was doing, I no longer needed to do. I could just I had a sales nav subscription. I was also speaking with a great guy who I think is also in your network. His name is Justin Bechtel. Shout out to Justin. Great
Justin's
guy. Was a
great.
really
Yeah.
big help to me when I started out the business. He was like, you should definitely get LinkedIn Sales Nav. He mentioned Dripify back in August of 2022. I was like, well, I'm not sure,
Yeah.
but like he was right. And so, and then I'm taking your class, seeing that, I could build my account lists in LinkedIn Sales Nav. You could validate it based on who was recently funded. You can then do a leads list based on who those relevant folks are that are at those companies, and then you just drag them and save them into Dripify. You do a campaign, and then you're done. You're done with your heavy loading for the rest of the week. All you're doing is just trying to engage and talk with them. And so, and even to this day, I actually, in Israel, the work day is Sunday to Thursday, but I, also have to work with Fridays. So I have a system in place. It's like Sundays is biz dev Sundays. So every week, every Sunday is just find 100 people that are really going to be a part of companies that I want to go after. I also am using other tools that I got Apollo, that I got Loxo as well. So you get email, and then you also have, good for cold calling. It's like here's my Dripify list, here's my Apollo list of who I want to go after over email. Create targeted campaigns for both, and then also create a targeted cold call list. So I've done all my prep on Sunday, and all I have to do for the rest of the week is either make calls or respond to LinkedIn posts that I'm seeing. And so when I implemented that last year in the beginning of 2023, I couldn't believe it. All of a sudden, I was getting all these conversations, and actually Dripify helped me close a loan two customers last year in the beginning of the first half of 2023. It got me like three other like meetings with contracts involved as well. It's a great biz dev opener. It was really awesome, and that all came from your first class. So I couldn't have scaled my business without Dripify. I very much believe in it. The only disappointment that I have is just I wish that other CRMs could do a better job
Integrate.
integrating
Yeah.
exactly to save me a lot of time. But like it doesn't matter because Dripify has done its value. I'm willing to compromise on that. Like you
Yeah.
have like
Yeah.
you know what I'm saying?
Dude, absolutely. And I think with the rest of the piece that you updated your LinkedIn, you took that feedback in the course of like, oh,
Yep.
here's how to optimize your LinkedIn profile. Here's how to have messaging that's not spammy. And we gave you, some templates and some stuff that's worked, but really how to think about your approach with messaging can change when you can do it at scale and you have the right profile. And so it's like, how do I generate conversations at scale versus, how do I close deals at scale? Right. Because the conversations, it has to start that way. What I always tell people is you have no idea if someone's going to be a good client or not. So why are you pitching them like you're begging for their business? Because you
Yep.
have no clue. So it's like, that's why the whole like, well, we can get you 10 to 20 leads and clients. And it's like, maybe, right? Like you might be able to do that. You might also just build the wrong audience. It's a bunch of like people that you shouldn't be aligned with, that aren't good fits or that aren't hiring. Like it's so much in how you use the inputs with the tools that make sense. And
Hmm.
people blame the tool, but it's really the inputs that are the issue.
Yep.
And that's the person controlling it. And I think the people that have success are like you that think about it critically. That's like, all right, what's the buyer's journey in automation? People, it's not that people hate automated messages. They hate automated messages that aren't relevant to them. And like that's a huge difference, right? That's a
That's right.
really big difference.
It's when you do your outreach, what I've learned is that when you can make a sale, you can try. It's not going to work out, but I tried to change my mindset is that anytime I reach out, I'm I'm trying. I believe that I have a problem. I have the ability to solve someone's problem, but most importantly is I'm here to have a conversation.
Yeah.
That's all. It's about building the relationship. It's just about starting to talk. And so many of those outreach that came from LinkedIn, Dripify. I went back to Boston in August. I know I got partners from the drip campaigns. I got potential new customers as well. I had a fully jam-packed week of meetings that
Yeah.
came just from the hey, how are your hiring efforts going in 2023? Or
Yeah.
like, what are some of the biggest problems you're trying to solve this quarter? And just talking about it. And
It's
like,
crazy.
yeah,
It's crazy
it
how it
was never
works.
like it was never like, hey, I see you're hiring. Let me help. Like that can shut a door as a potential buyer. I've
Because
seen it
everyone
myself. I
else is
got
doing it.
Everyone else is doing that. You don't have to check your inbox just to see how many folks are just being like, Clark, can I have a word, please? Like, I
Yeah.
can do this. And it's like, I don't want to talk about that. I want, if you're going to reach out to me, like, talk to me about something that is actually a problem that is worth solving. But like, let's talk. It's good to
I,
have that mentality. That's been really helping me with the drip campaign, man. A
I, I,
big believer in Dripify.
I love it. I love it. It's the tool is great, but it's again and how you're approaching it. You are understanding the spirit of the digital recruiter approach, and that's what really works, right? Because there's tools everywhere. There's systems. Systems are honestly what I focus on the least amount of the time because I think it's the approach and the consistency that people are missing, and that's what you have. I look at all the wins that the best success stories of digital recruiter, you being one of them. They understood the approach and the consistency, right? The system, all right, I can get a sales nav, I can get Dripify within 10 minutes. Now what? Right? Okay, I have my system. I can use Google for my CRM, my ATS. Like, well, now what? Right? The
Mm.
system really isn't that complicated. It's that piece of it. And so That is the piece. That's like the fundamental. Now, system's part of the equation, right? Approach, system, consistency equals great clients. Right? You followed the system, you kept going, but really, it's again, it is the approach, and it is building that network. And then I know you're starting to add some content, so you got the updated sales course and the content course. And then that, imagine what that's going to do now, and I'm sure it already is doing because I see you posting more to kind of recapture the people that you did talk to and the people that maybe didn't respond right away to
Yeah.
the Dripify. I'm sure some of them are coming back around too, because that's what happens when you stay top of mind. And again, it's content, but that's business development, staying top of mind, staying present, right? And that's a
Hmm.
follow up for 1 to 100 or 1 to 1,000 people, not 1 to 1. So you're being less annoying versus they're just seeing you in the feed and they're getting comfortable with you. And plus, there's a whole other psychology thing that happens when you put yourself out there. People put you in a different bucket, right? When you put yourself out there
Yeah.
with relevant content. So, and that just like moves you up the ladder in their eyes.
It's true. And then, for every time someone reacts to that content, that just leads to a potential opportunity for a conversation. Like I just put out a poll yesterday, like, what are the hardest to fill roles for go-to-market organizations for SaaS companies? And you see what people vote, like people voted some people voted biz dev, some people voted customer success,
Yeah.
and like some of these
No
people I
one, no
don't
one
even
voted
know.
marketing, which is pretty funny and not surprising.
I
Uh,
know, right? But like for some of those people that voted, like the plan is just to reach out and say, hey, why was it so hard for you? And just let's see where it goes. Like it's such a great. It's I think just also like learning through you. It's like the content is not there for the likes. It's there for the engagement. It's there for also driving the conversations that happen that you don't see in your mini feed every
yep.
day. It's when you go to your message, hey, I saw you react to this. Like what are your thoughts about this and like the conversation that come out of it. Like I've had like heart to hearts with like customer success executives about like what they look for in their team and their values of how they hire, and it's like, man, how did the conversation get here?
Yeah,
But like,
it's because
yeah.
people are dying to talk about this stuff, and that's why man, I love everything you're saying because this is like the heart of what I try to teach and get at. Is like there's a whole other type of conversation you can be having if you lead the way in removing the friction and removing the
Mm,
fear and the annoyance of responding to a recruiter. Just how do you show that you're a recruiter that gets it? Right? Like that's it. That is scalable to a bunch of great conversations. And I think it's hard for people that it's like the Wizard of Oz, right? You don't know until you see on the other side of the curtain at times,
mm,
but you got to kind of take that leap of faith. Like if I try this approach, I'm gonna have different types of conversation, and that might seem scary. Well, what do I say when someone opens up to me? It's like, well, worry about that when you get there, but let's get you there first, right? And then it's a whole other new set of problems. And sometimes there isn't a clear cut answer. Sometimes you just embrace it and you see what happens. And guess what? You might not make money out of every conversation, and that's okay too, right? Because that like that goodwill, that kind of that earned, like I would say collateral's the right, but yeah, that goodwill that you get from interacting with your market. It's not like your early stage sales, marketing, customer success. Like it's not like you're talking to people in construction every day, right? Okay, maybe that would be a waste of your time if you were selling early stage startups, customer success, but dealing with only people in construction, right? But with the right
mm.
targeted strategy, like this is part of what this is part of how you become a top biller because you know the market in and out, and that confidence resonates with the people that you're talking to. Those hiring managers are like, oh, like Jordan gets it, like he gets this market, this industry. I still think I go back to it, owning a niche, owning a vertical is as a full desk is like it's so important to really expediting that process, that learning curve, because then you're able to just kind of flow back and forth those conversations, give them insights, all that, and kind of really leave an imprint, right? And like
Yeah.
that's huge.
Yeah, 100%. I think that, I have friends that are recruiters and they are much more generalists. I see that for some people it does work, and then for some it doesn't. I really just think it depends on your perspective and where you come from. If you, if your whole career has been in recruiting and you worked at one firm doing this, at one firm doing that, but you know the art of recruitment and you know how to make it work, okay, great. Look, I come from software. I've been in software for the last 10 years of my career, but I've always found the most meaningful, what really resonates with me is early stage startups.
Yes.
Being in it and seeing what that does, it was like, because of the impact and found impact it had on me and also to many people that joined my company and also to my leadership team, the board, investors. I was like, I want to help other companies get there too, whether they think they need that help or not.
Yeah.
And so that's the other thing is like it's a challenge. It's a challenge being a recruiter in 2024. There's so many recruiters that are out there, and anyone can say they're a recruiter too. And I know that companies, hiring managers are getting spammed with recruiters in any possible angle. But if you have value that you can share, then you should get that out there. And that's what I'm seeing through LinkedIn. I mean, I'm not trying to preach here. I'm still figuring this out myself, but I'm finding already that by posting about my experience working in go-to-market is driving conversations with people that I never thought I would have had 3 or 4 months ago. And
And that's
so
it.
the quicker you can build that community, the quicker you can build that trust, and the quicker you can, cut the line to all the other folks that are, sending out these emails or, doing, spray and pray, mentalities. So in addition to content and also to drips with subtle conversation starters, it's amazing. And it's also really awesome. Like Dripify is also killing it for me on the candidate side. Um,
Yeah.
it's just unbelievable what it's doing. It's like I literally using the wording that I learned from your class. I'm getting anywhere between 55 to 75% acceptance rates, and I all the people that I placed, um, a lot of the people that I placed, not all, a lot of the people that I placed in 2023 came from Dripify,
I mean,
using
it's
Dripify.
it's the full desk tool. I mean, especially for sales, go to market, that 50 to 75% is typically what we've seen with the campaigns that we run. We help people run kind of
Mm,
in that niche, and it's amazing, right? You can almost have that on autopilot when you know the messaging that's going to open the door and get them the reply. And what you mentioned with the generalist, I think the ones that are generalists that are successful have been around for a while. They get a lot of referral business, but if you try that approach with cold outreach, it's almost impossible. Like cold
tough.
outreach almost requires a niche or at least some sort of specialty. If not, you're gonna have to have a really good content strategy to overcome some of that. Even my partner on the agency side, Lauren, like she was helping ready to scale companies and kind of across the board, no real niche, different departments. But even over the last few months, we've partnered together. We've realized like there's a sweet spot with like sales, engineering, and marketing. That's like a real sweet that comes up over and over again with
Yeah,
companies that are ready to take that next level. And that's much more of a niche than I can do anything, right? And so like
yeah.
even her, when it's like you really challenge of like, well, what do you like working on? What do you have the candidate relationships? What's like what moves quicker? Right? Where is there
Yep.
less friction? Almost everyone kind of has that. And that's what I would say for your cold outreach. And if you want more cold to warm accounts, find that lane and own it, right? Because your referrals
Mm.
are always going to ask you for, hey, can you help with this? Can you help with that? That's fine, but your cold outreach needs to be simple on where you can first help them and first serve them, and then it builds from there.
It's true. I mean, I just actually pivoted in addition to Dripify to start doing more cold calling. And I did a cold calling campaign to early stage startups that were hiring for sales roles both in Israel and also in the US. And I started getting on the phone with people and started asking, like, what are some of the problems that they're seeing with hiring for sales roles. And one of the people that I was spoken to threw it back and was like, well, what are some of the things you're seeing? Why should I think that I have a problem? Why should I have a problem with building my team? Like, well, let me tell you something. We're seeing with most of the tech companies that are getting laid off right now, they come from larger tech teams. You're a much smaller tech team. Would you be quick to hire someone that comes from a larger tech team? I would say no, because they have all the resources and experience that's out there to be able to help allow them to succeed. At an early stage startup like yourselves, you don't have that. You need someone that's a go-getter that can figure things out, and I can help you find those people. And that's how we were able to sign and to move forward, because it came from having the understanding of how early stage startups work and what they're looking for.
Yep.
And that was a really good example.
Yep. You're always on the spot as a recruiter, even if you know it or don't. And that's one
Yeah,
of the best ways to overcome it. I mean, that's it's a brilliant response because it's also just true and it makes sense, right? One of the terms I always use is make it make sense, right? With a candidate, it could be a job gap. With a client, it could be, well, why are they using us now, right? As long as it makes sense, it's the same thing for your hiring managers, right? As long as you can kind of make sense of the situation, they're like, oh, all right, yeah, you get it. Like, let's talk. Like, let's sign. Let's work together. Because as you get different partners, whether it's a market, same thing when you get a website, right? You want to establish that that person knows how to build a website, or builds a website that you're going to want, that you're going to want. You go through kind of the same vetting process. I always challenge people, think about your vetting process when you hire vendors. Like, and how does that apply to you and your managers and how they're going to vet you, right? And so, like, what are those key stages that you can do to kind of stand out and show that you are different? And how can you do that in the line of what you're already doing, like your workflow, right? And how can you
yeah,
automate any of those pieces and all that stuff, right? Or can you expand your reach, and what leverage could you have, like a LinkedIn content, to get that out there to a bunch of people at the same time, right? And like that's like the next level, and you're learning like the levers were critical for you because you were working full time doing this part time and had family and raising kids. Like, you had to understand leverage and utilize it.
yeah.
And it's almost
That's
like if you don't do that, you would have made. And it's interesting, people that do this full time have a hard time even understanding that, right? It's almost like you have too much time on your hands, at time. It's like, well, then that's where you got to dive deeper. You got to add calls, you got to add emails, right? You got to, like, just what can you keep chipping away at, right? Because there's
yeah.
always something.
That's right. When I got into recruiting and started doing my own biz dev, I consider myself very lucky. This is like the beginning of half two of 2022. They're coming off the amazing rally that started in the end of 2020, where because of the great resignation, all of a sudden companies really needed recruiters. I don't care, like, just you need it. And that was also the same thing, same buying behavior that we saw in SaaS as well. Like, companies that would take maybe 18 months to buy a software, or buy, like, banks for buying software in like less than 3 months, which is unheard of. And so the same buying behavior also applied to recruitment teams, the hiring managers. Like, I just need to fill this role and I need someone to help me. Like, I don't care what your background is. Just like, can you help? Okay, great. Yeah. So I have partners and friends that were in the industry that thrived during that time. Um, like, even in Israel, like, I have a partner, and he had like a connection that made alone just alone in Israel, $1 million in recruiting, and the salaries are generally much lower. Not much, but like are considerably lower here than what they are in the United States, especially on the go-to-market side. And she did it. Like, this is 2021 here, and so when I joined in 2022, I was very lucky to be able to get a couple of customers that didn't have too much of a due diligence process with me. That took a chance on me, and thank God I was able to deliver. That's not the case anymore. I saw that starting last year. You have to really be in your A game for how you deliver. So it's both coming in with conversations, it's showing that you have something different to offer, and showcasing that, like you said, building and modifying your LinkedIn page. That's the first place that the candidate or the prospect's gonna see who you are. Are you
Mm-hmm.
legit? And at the time, I wasn't legit. Like, my LinkedIn still had like a customer success manager at this company. It was like my main thing. And then, like, a little on the right, also customer success recruiter.
Yeah.
Like, didn't really call out that I was a recruiter. Really was not obvious. Like, really, um, kind of had a lot of help from above on this one. I really mean it. But on top of that, it was just once I modified that and I made my LinkedIn background much more about, like, you know, this is me as a recruiter, this is what I do. Now it's just like I have my banner. It's like, what is the cost of this hire, which is like the biggest pain point. I want this to be really elevated. I want this to be very much resonated so that when prospects visit me, I care about one of their biggest problems. I want to help them solve it.
Yeah.
But at the time, I couldn't do that. But once I started to modify the LinkedIn page, you know, improve my, wording or Dripify, and to expand and build out my offerings, to really try to just make the process for the buyer very smooth and very informed. It's a work in progress, but it's definitely gotten a lot better since last year. My customers, thank God, have been very much keen to stay with me as well. So,
And that's you deliver a good service and you have the retention, you get more market share, right? I think you focus on the role or two in front of you. Like if I take care of this, more can come, right? Versus trying to tackle all 10 or 15 or 20 at once. It's like, hey, let me show you I can do a really good job here, and let's build from there. And that approach, I found companies really appreciate that because so many recruiters try to bite off more than they can chew, and it's like the whole right over promise, under deliver. It's just like you could just also under promise and over deliver, right?
mm,
And I mean, for you, one rec at a time, two recs at a time is plenty in fees, right? And
yeah,
so like that, it kind of lines up with kind of what you can kind of handle at that time anyway. But that's like a real way to kind of build that rapport, and that's something else that you did that was really smart because then you open up the door to get more market share, right?
that's
And
right.
like that's also huge.
Yeah, 100%. I think one of the other things that I think that kept me alive in 2023 was investing in client account management. I actually flew back to Boston to visit a customer. That was one thing, holiday gifts is a big one. But on top of it, it was more like, hey, I think you mentioned that you're going through a Series B investment round. I know investors that would love to speak with you. I introduce, my clients to investors. I introduced them to people that are service providers that can help them out. I've done product marketing help. I've tested one of their products as well. Um, I've helped people that have, one of the startups I work with, someone recently moved to Boston. I've connected him with people that are in Boston that he could reach out to, have a community, and just building on that. And that was actually really cool because investing in like that, particularly that relationship, this was in the beginning of 2023. Him and I tried filling a role. And unfortunately, it didn't work out. We had a couple folks in the final round and misaligned expectations. It was a really good learning opportunity, and they ended up hiring internally. And I said to them, "That's awesome. I'm really happy you were able to hire internally. You're cutting your costs. You're saving. This is very smart." And I also noticed that you moved to Boston. I'd love to introduce you to this guy. And then he came back to me like a couple weeks and said, "Hey, by the way, that's later. Like we're trying to hire a director of operations, and we fired the person, didn't work out." And I was like, okay, I'm able to help you. Within a couple of days, we found the guy, and a year later, that guy is still there, and that guy is hiring for his own team now. So
Hmm.
it's awesome how that works out. Like it's just even when the wins don't happen, it's just the relationship is the most important thing. Invest in however way you can. Even if as not a recruiter, think about just like some of the problems and the needs that startups are having. Is it funding issues? Am I struggling in other areas of business, vendors, services? Can I provide value for that? Because they're looking at me, I hope, like, okay, wow, Jordan can't just recruit, but he cares about us, he wants us to succeed. And so that builds trust. And I believe that I have built good trust with my clients. And when clients have left to other businesses, I've had the fortune to be able to go with them too. It's amazing, even also with candidates too, right? It's always about building that strong relationship. I very much am a believer in the service mindset and trying to always to be able to make sure that everyone is happy and everyone is getting what they want, if not more. And my philosophy is, and I know this is not popular, is I'd rather take a longer time in the search to find you the person that's going to stay with the company longer. That's the whole reason why we are preventing mishires. The search takes a little bit longer, we're more thoughtful, and our candidates stay. And that's why I'm in this business.
Absolutely. Well, you have the process down, and if you keep with this process, only good things, like way more good things happen than not good things. And that's just like you've tapped into that and you can kind of just keep going with it. And as you build those networks and those relationships, that you give them more reasons to reach out to you than just, hey, we have an open role. And that's always what you want. So as I'm encouraging people is just like, that's the way you want to think about it, right? You want managers to have more than one reason to reach out to you. And to your point about the candidates, I just got off the call a couple hours ago with someone that bought the course, like much like you did, the early bird special. So they got like bonus one-on-one calls, like coaching call with me, and we talked about okay, the Dripify campaign is targeting healthcare C-level people, and they're responding to her, and she's getting some meetings, and she's also getting some of the, hey, I'm actually not hiring, but I'm looking. And she was kind of disappointed with those responses. I was like, you got like stop right here. Like my not free advice, right? Because she bought the course was like, so let me get this right. You do searches that average 30K a pop, executive search in healthcare. You get C-suite people that are saying like, not hiring, but I'm looking. They're gonna be somewhere. They're either gonna stay where they're at or they're gonna go somewhere else, and you don't want to talk to them. What am I missing
That's
here?
right.
Right? Like, there's a huge thing. Like, imagine talking to those people. You're getting the response. Like, if you help them out, you give them some feedback, where to look, make some introductions, help with their resume, whatever it is, right? It could be a C-level that hasn't updated their resume in 20 years, right?
That's
Imagine for
right.
us, a recruiter, we could fix that up in 2 seconds for the most part, or give them some key tips of advice. It's like, oh, I didn't think of that, right? Or how much has the landscape changed just in the last 3 years, let alone the last 10, 20 years? There's so
Mhm.
much value that you can add as a candidate. And if you're talking to that level, like a candidate now is a hiring manager at some point again soon, right? And some
Mhm.
of the times they're testing you. They're testing recruiters to see, would you actually give me the time of day, or are you only going to if I have a job for you? And I've had multiple of those stories come back from our internal team at Digital Recruiter Talent Group and through clients. So it's like that mindset has to shift if you really want to get the most out of this type of approach and the most out of your cold outreach. If you line up your strategy so you are connecting with the managers, I don't care if they're hiring or looking right now, to talk to them. And there's time in your schedule to talk to them. It's a lot more effective to talk to that person to maybe go search out, to make maybe another 20 cold calls. All right, because you don't know
Yeah.
because you have an opportunity to create a relationship where you haven't yet with those 20 cold calls, right? And
Yeah.
like that's if you have the targeting right, your profile and everything. Guess what they're gonna do? They're gonna like your post. They're gonna comment, right? They're gonna share it with other people. They're gonna tell it like it's just gonna build more and more and more. And if a C-level person in healthcare or an early stage likes your post, guess who's gonna see it? Their whole network, right? And so
That's
people
right.
forget the domino effect that happens just by taking one call. That could be 15 minutes. Like you never know. I've done that for 2 straight years. I mean, really three, but 2 years of digital recruiter since I started part time, and it is crazy the feedback I get at times. Like this person, all that. Like I get, people buy the course that are like third degree connections. I'm like, how'd you find me? Like, oh, I saw a post. I'm like, really? Like, okay,
Mm.
that's cool, right? Or like someone keeps resharing something, right? People that respect that person, right? Like they see you, respecting you. They're like, oh, I got to then know that person. You've just completely shortcutted the process, the business development
Yeah.
process, by just over and over. It's like waves in the ocean, like you said, by just treating people the right way. And I know I'm kind of rambling a little bit, but you know what? It's our podcast, so we can do what we want.
That's
But like,
that's
it's
right.
so important. It is so important. Like this concept fundamentally is what's changing businesses for digital recruiters. Like it's that piece of it.
That's right. You know, when you post on LinkedIn or when you are just being on LinkedIn, you're in the market.
You're in
And when
it.
you're in the market, there's someone who's always got an eye on you. How is this person going to react? What they're going to do? And they'll remember what you did too. And I remember also when I started that drip campaign, I got a lot of folks being like, they're not looking, they're not looking for a new customer success manager, but I'm also looking for my next job. And I would have conversations with people, and I also help them like these folks that have had 20 or 30 years in the game. I'm like this guy that's just been recruiting for half a year was helping them out with their CV. I felt like I was the one that was unworthy. But on top of that, at the time, just like building those relationships, you never know that when like I remember I helped this one woman out who was a director of customer success with her CV, and she was looking for her next role. And then she like just posted on LinkedIn, like there's like it's really amazing to meet like really great kind people. I want to thank Jordan Greenberg, this complete stranger, for taking the time to help me out with my CV. I was like, whoa, like I just like put like 10, 15 minutes into just like looking, and I'm helping out and make it better. Like it's amazing. Like every response is an opportunity. Like you were
Yeah.
saying before, it's not like we can't look at every conversation as transactional. As every response is an opportunity to have a really good conversation.
Yep.
And every conversation can lead to a great relationship, and you should just leave it as that. You
Eh,
shouldn't leave it as like this person's going to be my next customer, this person's going to be my next great candidate. It's like I'm really building great relationships, and wherever that goes, that's going to go. I'm just going to stay focused, and maybe I can pull those people in down the road. They can pull me in, but as long as I have their back and they have mine, then and I'm adding value, and I've had proof that I've added value. They're not going to forget that, and I'm not going to
it's
forget that.
it's I mean, it's well said. I mean, we're matchmakers at the end of the day, right? Career matchmakers. If you're a matchmaker, you got to have enough pieces, enough really strong pieces to be able to make that match, or we put together the puzzle. Like that's our job, right? It's almost like an NFL coach or a GM, right? You got to get all the right players all in the same arena, right? And then
That's
you have
right.
practice to kind of figure out, okay, who's the starting lineup, who's the reserves, and all that. It's like that top of funnel is just like get the right people to the right to your arena, and then from there you can kind of figure out the teams and the lineups and who plays where. Like, but just you got to get to that, and it's a stage, and you have to respect the stage. It's not
That's right.
one step; it's A, B, C, D, E, F. It's not just A to B all the time, and that's just the shift, and people will start feeling that and start to feel valued, and you're doing that dozens of times a month and then 100 times a year, eh, eh, you get to kind of where you're at now. You're able to leave your job, go through this full time. You have a predictable system and vision and business, and you know what levers to pull and push. And you got, now ongoing clients, retention, referrals, new cold outreach. You never know every day what could happen. And that's like the fun part, right? Because you could do things that could have some really cool ROI every day. So it's awesome. I love that you shared that piece of it. I want to cover one last thing before we wrap up. Is you work with clients in different countries, and not a lot of our listeners, well, most of our listeners are kind of U.S. based. Um, what what are some of the kind of the things like that, like you've seen differently, maybe culturally? You talked about U.S. and Israel a little bit, kind of from a job seeker side, which is interesting, but from a business development, anything that you've had to change up with, like your messaging or how you approach or agreements, like what are some things that come up there?
In Israel, I've walked into buildings to sell myself. I've actually walked into offices. They'll be like, I noticed you're hiring for this. This is what I specialize in. And one, I got in a no. But like it's in Israel, it's called chutzpah. It means having nerves.
Oh yeah.
It's a thing that's very championed here. Um,
It's
I
funny
wouldn't do
because we
that in
did that
America.
in the U.S. and people do not like that in the U.S. But I did it all the time at Aerotech. But it's interesting that in Israel, it's actually like Lotalion, right? So
Yeah.
it's just that's an interesting difference. But go ahead.
I I
Yeah.
think that also in Israel, it's doing cold calling is good and getting right to the point. Like this is, hey, like, you know, Clark, this is Jordan from the Recruitery. I noticed you're hiring for this. Tell me how it's been a struggle. Like leave an open-ended question, or like, I can help you with doing this and this and that. Folks might want to delve on that. And I found that Dripify can be good, but don't sell right away. Like just talk about like, hey, congratulations on your recent funding. What was that like? Open it up. And then the best thing that I've done for Israel is just going to networking events. I've gotten customers to that. It's a big community here, so going to going to meetups, going to conferences. It's a great way to meet people. Israel is a very much more in the face type of mindset. um, I think that connections go really far here. And on top of that, another good example is having someone introduce you to the hiring manager. This has happened a couple of times where folks that I used to work with, that moved on to different companies. Hey, I noticed that they're hiring. Could you introduce me? And they're more willing to trust that. And introductions are very much a good thing as well.
Uh,
From a candidate standpoint, though, I know you mentioned BizDev, but the candidate is actually different too with outreach. They're much more like get to the point. Like I have, especially like with software developers, it
yeah,
is keep it like what's something that they could probably be dreading in their current job and start off with the opportunity. Everything should be about what's in it for them. So
yeah,
like, are you looking to build something new? I have a company that does this. You can build your own code from scratch. The salary is this. It comes with benefits. It comes with job security. Like 4 bullet points. Interested in learning more. And that has gotten a lot of responses. A lot of I'm not interested, but a lot of times I get from candidates, software development candidates, thank you for like being so straightforward and upfront because I've never gotten this before, and I find that in a lot of conversations with Israeli recruiters and also with candidates is that the salary doesn't even get mentioned until like the last step. They'll just like go along with it type of thing. Like, hey, we'll see if we're gonna haggle. Israel is much more of like a it's like a very much like a haggling, trading type of mentality. It's very
yeah,
much negotiate, 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 negotiate. Put yourself out there. Stand up for yourself as well. A lot of the times you'll see CEOs be like, I don't think you're a good person for the role, and then you'll be like, actually, I disagree with you, and here's why. Like stand up for yourself. Like, okay, let's talk. And it's much more of a transparent and more egalitarian
yeah,
mindset. There's not so much bureaucracy and steps. Like I can yell at the CEO and they'll be like, good points,
yeah.
you know? Or I can if I can find a way to get to that CEO, they'll respect your struggle for how you did it and how you thought outside the box and be like, okay, let's talk.
I like that. I like that. I mean, it's so many similar themes. And I think even as you said, with the short, concise, get to the point outreach, I think that's effective everywhere right now because you're giving people a different experience than what they're used to with recruiters, which is so important to think of. And that software, I mean, those are right, those candidates are gold, right, in our eyes, the agency recruiters, and you're getting them on your side with just
Mm-hmm.
being thoughtful about the messaging and the outreach. And as you said, what's in it for them, which is something we repeat ad nauseum over at Digital Recruiter in our mastermind, right? What is in it for the other side? That's fundamentally everything that we're doing here is really thinking through that lens. And sometimes we don't know, but we got
Yeah.
to try something and try to figure it out and try to see what works as a piece of content or messaging and all that. Some might work, some might not. It's okay because when you get stuff that hits, that changes your business, right? And that could change your life. So it's awesome.
Yeah.
Well,
Absolutely.
dude, this is awesome. I appreciate you. I know we're coming up in the hour. I know it's late over there. You got to get back to work and wrap up your
Yeah, I
day.
got a
But
candidate call right now.
yeah, I know. I got to let you go. So, dude, I appreciate you, Jordan. From just being, getting the material back in the day when it first came out, implementing it, just everything, your approach, sharing your story and all that with us. I think it should be inspiring and motivating. Of like, if you just do the right work, it's going to happen. And
Yeah.
so I love it. This is super awesome and valuable. And I just, I appreciate you, man.
I appreciate that also very much, Clark, and I appreciate being a student of yours and also
Yeah.
very much a student to many in your community that have done your class. I've learned a lot from them along the way. I still feel like I don't know too much and I'm learning as I go, but just the goal is just to keep going with it, just keep consistent. And I'm very much lucky to have you in my network and to continue learning from you as well.
Likewise. Well, I appreciate that, man. That means a lot. And we'll have Jordan's LinkedIn URL. We'll make sure to get that article in there as well. And Jordan, man, appreciate your time and go take care of that candidate.
Appreciate it, Clark. All
See
the
you, man.
best.
All right. Bye,
Good
y'all.
night.